Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? A little short follow-up video, which is like a bonus, except it's not really a bonus because it's things I kind of didn't think of or forgot to say when I made a video about the limitations of 2D6 mechanics. And don't get me wrong, I like 2D6 mechanics. I like them an awful lot. But game design is hard. And, once you start looking at mechanics, you start looking at the probabilities, all that kind of stuff. Like, how various dice systems work. Let's just stick to dice because that's easier and most of our games use them. It's not as easy as you think to pick one or find the right one to do the thing that you want it to do and do it well, which is one of the reasons, and now I'm digressing big time, is, that a lot of us really like to, mess around with different mechanics for like something like OSR games because, we find one, I like the way this models the thing better. But anyhow, let's stop that digression right now. I got some great comments from a lot of people, including like Chris Hall, who asked this great question about using 2D10 instead. The idea that, okay, well, using a 2D6, well, you can't really layer the modifiers that much. And I talked a little bit about the idea that using 3D6, take the two highest or two lowest, depending, is great, but, layering those two things together can be a little problematic. What about 2D10? And the fact is, in a die pool like that, like a 2-die pool, if you increase the die size, yes, you can start to layer modifiers more. It works out a little bit better. I didn't run the math on 2D10, but I know how this thing works. And the thing is, yes, that works, but then the really seductive and really cool thing about the 2D6 mechanic goes away, which is that the modifiers are extraordinarily powerful. That maybe you don't want to have this big spread or array of modifiers in terms of, say, character competence, because, plus or minus 3, 1 to 3, that's 7 different layers of competence already. So say, that modifier system in 2D6 works extraordinarily well. It's very, very powerful. But, so you lose that if you go to 2D10 or 2D12 or whatever. So that's one of those things to consider. The other thing that CGA brought up, actually, he gave me a goodwill actually, and CGA is always very good for the goodwill actuallys, was that, I was overstating my case just a little bit. And he said, well, what happens, Ivan, is, even with these really high modifiers and even stacking the situational modifier used by like some 2D6 games was using 3D6 and, take the two highest, two lowest as well. It definitely beefs things up in the middle, but at the ends, they still kind of get squished. And so if your target number is really high, that's still not going to be, instant success or instant failure. And that's true. But that brings up another limitation of the 2D6 mechanic. And it's because 2D6 and mechanics like it are dice pools, and in particular, they're roll and total dice pools, where you add up all the numbers on all the faces of the dice to get your final result. Because of that, when you have a modifier, plus 1, 2, 3, whatever it is, it's not going to be as helpful for you when your target number is really, really high. So if your target number is like, say, 10 on 2D6, it's a tough task, or 11, even if you're a super skilled person, that great modifier, when you really need it the most, isn't going to help you as much as if the target number is like 7, in which case it helps you an awful lot. So that's a limitation of 2D6 and other dice pools, is, the modifiers that you're hoping, or maybe you on purpose design it to be really helpful. Now the super competent character is supposed to be able to do the really hard thing. Well, they're not a lot better at the really hard thing than the normal character. And I'm overstating that a little bit, but you can look at the numbers and look at the links in the last video and start to see, the modifiers aren't, as helpful then. I mean, even something like the advantage-disadvantage mechanic in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, which is certainly not the first game to use something like that, has the same problem. When the target numbers are really high, well, it doesn't work as much. So the point is not that any of these mechanics are bad. It's that game design is hard. When you start to look at, how various dice systems work, what kind of results do they spit out, you have to be really, really careful and really, really astute to pick the right one. So, game designers, good game designers, really do a great job. And if you don't put a lot of thought into it, well, we've all played games where we're like, that didn't work the way I think they wanted it to.